Welcome into OutKick the show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you have had fantastic weeks. I am here on a Friday rolling you into the weekend, and we got a bunch of stuff to discuss across the landscape of sports, pop culture, politics, and otherwise. I don't know that I said this, by the way. I have been really impressed with, I know I talked about it after maybe 3 episodes. What are we, 6 episodes into House of the Dragon Season 2? The finale is Sunday, and I have absolutely loved this year of House of the Dragon. Am I right? Are there 8 episodes maybe instead of 7? Anyway, the finale, I believe I'm correct, is Sunday, and I have absolutely loved this show. It has been utterly fantastic, and it is really, really a lot of fun to watch. Maybe even I should talk about, if I'm home, potentially doing a Sunday night live reaction show to House of the Dragon. I hadn't really thought about it very much, but I've been on the road so much for so many of these episodes that I haven't watched most of them live. If I'm home, I'm going to try to watch this thing on Sunday live. I'm just not sure that I'm going to be home. We'll talk about that. Maybe I text the crew or whatever. Several different things out there. We got another boxer with XY chromosomes beating up a woman. We will talk about that. Skip Bayless, last show ever at FS1 after 8 years. What is his legacy in sports media? Kamala narrows in on a vice presidential pick. It appears, barring a big upset, it's going to be Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. He now is under attack for being too pro-Israel and for being Jewish. My 13 and 9-year-old sons have put a hole in the wall. And so that in and of itself is a funny story. I'll share a bit with you. I've tweeted about it. Kamala Harris has made it a race. I'll give you the latest on the gambling markets. And I will talk to you about the economy, the border, and crime, what I'm calling EBC, which is an unquestioned map and pathway to winning the presidency in a little over 90 days. But I want to start with also unemployment has hit 4.3%, the highest since October of 2021. What is going on here? Stock market, as I speak to you, is tanking. Let me get you the absolute latest on that. It was down 1,000 points earlier. As I'm speaking to you, down 775 points. Gold is soaring. There is now economic indicators that would suggest that a recession could be coming. I'll talk a bit about that. But I want to start with this controversy that has arisen surrounding the 2 different boxers, one from Algeria, one from Taiwan, who have had their chromosomes tested. They look like men. They throw punches like men more than they do women. And they have XY chromosomes, which is the biological marker for men. Okay? For those of you out there who have forgotten your basic biology, XX is women, XY is men. And these 2 individuals, according to a boxing organization that disqualified them from competition, were shown to have XY chromosomes. That means that for purposes of biology, they are men. And they have been competing as women, and the Boxing Federation tested them and said, you aren't eligible for us. The International Olympic Committee, that is the Olympics, allowed them to compete, and them beating up girls, women, has become a major story. And people have tried to push back, and they've tried to say, no, they're women. So let me just be straightforward here. If you have XY chromosomes, you are a man. If you have XX chromosomes, you are a woman. That is the reality. Now, some individuals are born intersex. That is, they sometimes have biological organs that appear to be representative of both sexes. I wasn't in the birthing room. I don't know the particular details here. What I can tell you is It's a pretty easy rule for me to apply. If you are a woman, you have XX chromosomes. If you are a man, you have XY chromosomes. If you have XY chromosomes, you compete against men. If you have XX chromosomes, you compete against women. This isn't complicated. We have, throughout history, tried to make competition fair by keeping men from competing against women, by having weight classes for combat sports, by having different sizes for different organizations, AAA, single A, double A, whatever, based on the size of a high school, by sometimes splitting public and private schools, this is high schools, by sometimes splitting scholarship from non-scholarship schools, as we would do, for instance, in D1 compared to D3 athletic competition, by having grade and age distinctions, that is, there is JV basketball, which typically might include 9th and 10th graders. There is middle school basketball, which does not include high schoolers. There is high school basketball, which does not include colleges. There is 12U baseball, which does not include 14, 16-year-olds. We have all sorts of rules designed to aid competition. We also sometimes have even criminal prosecutions related to performance-enhancing drugs being used, certainly have bans that have been applied for using performance-enhancing drugs to aid your overall performance. XY, that is the male chromosome, is the most performance-enhancing opportunity available to any woman because you're not actually a woman. Men are bigger, stronger, and faster than women. Doesn't mean that every man is bigger, stronger, and faster than every woman. There are women who are taller than me. I'm 6 foot. There are a lot of women who are taller than me. There are women who are stronger than me. There are women who are faster than me. But as a group, I am going to be faster as a man than the average woman would be. And the average man is going to be stronger than the average woman would be, faster and taller. And when you get to the absolute apex, that is the top 1%, the top 0.1 of 1%, the top 0.1 of the 0.1%, the difference between male and female performance becomes seismic, such that no woman can compete with the best male athletes. And so I'm baffled by the degree to which so many people in sports media on Twitter/X are trying to argue that this is okay. The same people, I have to believe, if a 16-year-old tried to play in 12U baseball, would say, no, this is anti-competitive fairness. Some things that we argue about today, I can't believe are actually real. This is one of them. Someone with XY chromosomes, even if they identify as a woman, should not be able to compete against women in the Olympics. And there's been stories about this for a generation. There is a runner named Caster Semenya, I think. Adam, you can look up the details on her. She identifies as a woman, but because of intersex-related issues, I believe has XY chromosomes or off-the-charts levels testosterone. And that athlete is not allowed to compete as a woman because they have decided that there are too many competitive advantages that come with her biology, his biology, however you want to classify it. And this is why we have genetic testing, because this doesn't happen in men's sports, because no one who is borderline men could ever, that is a woman or a man, like intersex, none of those people could ever compete for a men's medal. None of them could make a men's team. None of them could compete in the Olympics. So it's never an issue for men. This only arises as for women. And I'm stunned that this is not a bigger issue, particularly in combat sports, where you have people who are XYs, that is men, biologically, beating the crap out of women and succeeding at a high level in the sport. It's wrong. Shouldn't be allowed to happen. And the number of people out there that are trying to defend this staggers me. It's not complicated. If you want to see some of the details surrounding this, you can go into my Twitter feed. I just shared a super detailed article on Twitter explaining all of the permutations of this and why it's just flat out wrong. And the fact that we're here at all, where anybody would ever try to argue, oh, well, I should be able to compete as a woman because why? Because you feel like you're a woman? What is the standard here? They were genetic tested. They did not dispute it, and they have XY chromosomes. This is a man pretending to be a woman for purposes of athletics. Now, is it unfortunate? Yeah, I feel bad. Feel some degree of sympathy for someone who has been competing as a woman and then finds out, oh, wait a minute, you're actually a man. Caster Semenya, this is what Adam found, is the highest profile DSD athlete, born legally female, but has a condition that means her body naturally produces higher levels of testosterone. Following the introduction of limits on testosterone levels for female athletes, the South African runner had to use medication in order to compete and refused to do it. So again, there's histories of this happening in the past. Boxing of all sports, I would think this would be a pretty big deal. You know, if this were marksmanship or something where you're not physically pummeling each other, maybe I would feel differently. But this doesn't feel at all like a complicated story. I give credit to Riley Gaines for speaking out about it. And to me, it is pretty straightforward, easy to understand. These women, these men, biologically, however you want to classify them, these two XYs, biological males, should not be able to compete in women's boxing. Pretty simple. The Olympic Committee got this wrong. They failed. They failed the women. They failed everybody else. Okay. Skip Bayless posted a message and said, hey, thank you for the time there, everybody we worked with, and said he is now done at FS1. 8 years on Undisputed, elevated Shannon Sharp to a very high level of celebrity by sparring against Shannon Sharp. At its peak, a couple of years ago, this show was regularly challenging First Take in a significant way, and part of these so-called sports debate programs. And Skip, who I believe is like 72 years old now, if I'm not mistaken, is done with Undisputed and has announced that he's leaving. So, first of all, what is the legacy here? I think we've seen an interesting era in sports, by which I mean when I started, the idea was you have to work at ESPN or Fox or CBS or NBC in order to matter. And you desperately fought as hard as you could to get one of those jobs. And if you were fortunate enough to get one of those jobs, sometimes you held on to them desperately because the fear was if you weren't employed there, no one would care about you. And ESPN really believed that ESPN mattered and everybody who left ESPN would flounder and fail. It's clearly not true. There were people who were pioneers that were willing to go off and leave ESPN, and they had success. I think Dan Patrick probably was the first guy to say, hey, I can leave. I can build an audience of my own. He started the Dan Patrick Show. He's had a fabulously successful career. I was his lead-in on Fox Sports Radio for a long time, 5 years, whatever the math was. And a lot of you are Dan Patrick fans. Then you had Colin Cowherd, Skip Bayless, Aaron Andrews. You had a lot of people leave ESPN and go to Fox and maintain the same level of viability of a cultural context as they would have had at ESPN. And I think you can point to all those guys and gals that I just ran through and say, yeah, they did pretty well no matter where they were located. And then you also simultaneously had a guy like Bill Simmons who left ESPN and did really well for himself at Spotify. And then you have guys like the Barstool Crew. You've got OutKick. that built outside of the sort of the chosen universe, but built audiences for themselves in the digital realm and have been able to parlay those audiences into really good success. What is the lesson of Skip as he leaves Fox? I don't know what his future will be, but I do think his legacy is that talent matters more than platform. And I think that's become true across the entire media landscape. It used to be if you weren't on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, you didn't matter at all. And I'm not saying that those groups don't still matter. Look, Fox News just had its best July ever. Platforms still provide massive audiences. But whether it's Joe Rogan, whether it's the Call Her Daddy crew, whether it was Howard Stern back in the day when he went to Sirius, the era of the internet has proven that the talented individual matters more than the larger brand media style surrounding it. That is, the audience will follow. When Skip left and went to FS1, there were a lot of people who said, man, nobody is ever going to watch him on FS1. Same thing was said about Cowherd. Both of them wildly exceeded the expectations. Same thing with Dan Patrick. And so I think the lesson out there is there isn't necessarily a brass ring of big media success in the way that there was when I started in this era, just as the internet was starting to take off. I founded OutKick in 2011 because I thought social media meant that people would be able to find me no matter where I went. And I experienced this in my own career. Some of you are old enough to remember reading me back in the early 2000s. I wrote at CBSSports.com. I had developed a pretty substantial audience at CBSSports.com. I went to Deadspin and worked as an editor there. When I left Deadspin because I didn't get along with AJ DeLorio, who would later post the Hulk Hogan tape and end up getting all of Gawker bankrupted. When I didn't get along with AJ and I went away from Deadspin, there was no major social media platform where my audience could still find me. For years, people didn't know where I was if you had gotten used to reading me on CBS. Maybe you followed me to Deadspin, but after that, it took a while for me to build a new audience at Fan House. When Fan House shut down in 2011, social media had elevated to the point where I thought the name on the back of the jersey mattered more than the name on the front of the jersey. That was my big gamble in 2011, and I was right. And I've been rewarded for that gamble. And I think Skip made the same gamble in whatever it was, 2016, when he left and he went to Fox Sports, that people would follow him, and he was right. And Cowherd was right. And the lesson I would give to all of you is your own individual talent matters. Your own work ethic matters. Your brand matters. You have to develop it so that your audience will follow you wherever you go for the rest of your life if you truly want to have creative freedom. Otherwise, you're always going to be at the beck and the call of whoever owns the site that you work for. And I had experienced that at CBS, at Deadspin, and at Fan House. When I started OutKick, I just wanted a place where I knew I could write whatever I wanted, and nobody could stop me from doing that. So I think that's the legacy of Skip Bayless. It is a confirmation of the era on the internet where people follow talent. People don't follow big brands. And I think we're still seeing the impact of that across many different aspects of the media ecosystem. I talked about this on the show, and I'm going to be hammering it on OutKick the show for the next 90 days or so. This election is not going to be decided by Kamala Harris being a side chick for Willie Brown. I'll talk about it. I think it's relevant because I think it goes to Kamala Harris's ambition over everything, lifestyle. It's not going to be decided by whether Kamala Harris is black or Indian or whatever ethnic background she is. I believe this race is going to be decided by three letters, EBC: economy, border, and crime. Kamala's going to try to make it about identity politics. She's going to try to make it about abortion. She's going to try to make it about freedom, whatever that means. Most voters, especially those that are persuadable, care about the economy, the border, and crime. EBC for simple. Those three things. I just said on the radio program, there's a reason why just about every single person in America is taught the 5-paragraph essay. Do you remember the 5-paragraph essay? You open, then you do 3 arguments, and then you do a conclusion. The 3 arguments here are the economy, 4.3% unemployment announced today, the highest since October of 2021. Inflation got to 9%, has driven mortgage rates to 20-year highs. Cost of goods has vastly exceeded wage growth. The economy is a mess, and it's because of the decisions made by Joe Biden. That's point 1. Second point's the border. The border is wide open. Over 10 million illegals that we know of, probably a low number, has spread into the United States. Kamala Harris was the border czar, however you want to classify it. Joe Biden put her in charge of the border, and she failed it. She failed in a big way. The biggest way, in fact, that the border has ever been in terms of its openness was because of Kamala Harris. That's point 2. And even if you live in Chicago or New York or San Francisco or LA or Denver or Atlanta or DC, these are all blue cities run by Democrats. Your city has probably been flooded with illegal immigrants that are changing the way that your city tax dollars are spent. They have failed, Democrats, Biden and Kamala, on the border. Finally, crime. Crime, quality of life crime, carjackings, theft, shoplifting, in addition to murder, as well as sex assault, violent crimes, has grown substantially during Joe Biden's tenure. Kamala Harris raised money to defund the police and bail out those who were arrested in Minneapolis for looting, for rioting. She supported defund the police in 2020. Now she's trying to walk back that support. The economy, Kamala's wrong on. The border, Kamala's wrong on. And crime, she is wrong on. EBC. Now, there are other issues. We just talked about XY chromosomes, men beating up women. There are other sundry issues. Wrong on Israel's right to defend itself. Wrong on supporting in any way protesters on college campuses advocating for Palestine. All those things. But really, this election, if Trump is disciplined and just stays focused on the economy, the border, and crime, he's going to win. EBC. Looks like, speaking of the battle, Kamala is going to go with Josh Shapiro as her vice presidential pick. That is the odds-on favorite right now. Let me pull it up and give you the numbers as we speak. It would not shock me if we get an announcement on Monday morning, maybe this weekend, that Josh Shapiro is going to be the nominee. Now, to be fair, Shapiro's odds are declining as he is coming under attack for being too pro-Israel and also being Jewish. This is a big deal, okay? The Democrat Party now has so many people that are anti-Semitic that the idea of picking a Jewish vice president is considered to be unacceptable to the left in the party. And they are attacking Josh Shapiro like crazy. It's interesting to me because this wasn't an issue, at least not that I remember, in 2000 when Al Gore selected Joseph Lieberman as his vice presidential running mate. The Democrat Party did not have a lot of anti-Semites, at least not that I was seeing, in 2000. And Al Gore picked Lieberman. 24 years later, if you question how much the parties have shifted, now it is the left that has an issue potentially with a Jewish vice presidential candidate. I think it's a big story. Also, as you break this down on a larger scale, the fact that that would be an issue at all is an indictment of the left wing of the Democrat Party. And I'll also indict anti-Semites who vote Republican. And this is why I've said for some time, we think about politics as a political spectrum, but it's often actually a circle. And people can be on the far right and the far left and end up with the same perspective, which is how there are anti-Semites who are Republicans and anti-Semites who are Democrats. The difference is the Democrat anti-Semites are actually given a great deal of power. I can't name anybody in the Republican Party who's anti-Semitic and has any kind of power in the party at all. Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, members of the squad, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, who just lost, they're pretty strongly anti-Israel and anti-Semitic, which is not always the same thing, but in their case is. And they have prominent positions of power inside of the Democrat Party. So this is a big deal that he might be shot down. Now, if they don't accept him as a party, and his odds are dropping literally as I'm talking to you, he was just at 61%. I clicked refresh, and he went down to 60%. If he's not the selection, then Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is the second most likely now. Andy Beshear, who is Kentucky's governor, is the third most likely. Mark Kelly and Mayor Pete are right now the top five. To me, Josh Shapiro, I tweeted it when Kamala became the nominee, is the no-brainer pick. If she ends up not picking Josh Shapiro, I think that's a big win for Republicans because there is no pathway to victory for Kamala Harris in 2024 that doesn't run through the state of Pennsylvania. So that is the absolute latest on the Veep stakes on the Democrat side. Josh Shapiro under attack for being Jewish and too supportive of Israel. All right. I'll close out here with a little fun story. I put it on Twitter, but like a lot of you, I bet, my boys, the 13 and the 9-year-old, have been playing EA College Sports video game constantly, playing it all the time. They say it's the best video game that's ever been made. Some of you may also agree with that. I, by the way, have had no time to play. I think I'm going to stay retired because they would wax me. They're in the process of building dynasties with a variety of different teams and recruiting. I mean, it is a lot of fun. They love it. Occasionally, though, they say that the game is cheating. All of you know who have ever played a video game that arguing the game is cheating is a staple of any video gamer's vocabulary. But the other day, so my oldest is still away at camp. He's been away at camp for a large part of the summer, so he's not to blame. My wife pointed out that there is a hole in the wall, and that hole in the wall, literal hole in the wall, was not there before, and nobody else has been in and out of the house. It's by where they play video games. And she said, ask the boys, hey, how did this happen? Did you do this? And I would say, like a lot of boys around that age, they're always tackling each other. They're always throwing whatever ball is in the vicinity. They are rambunctious and constantly fighting and throwing each other around and everything else. So I think there's almost 100% chance this was entirely them. But I said, who else could have done this? Who else could have done this? And they said, the cat. Now, it's 4 foot high up on the wall, 4 feet tall. Cat is not very big. And just to get out in front of all the childless cat ladies out there that are going to be angry at me, we have 2 cats. I was not in favor of the cats. These were 2020 additions. Kids weren't in school. My wife told the boys, hey, make the case for why we should have animals in the house. She said, look, here's the deal. The boys really want cats. You're outvoted. All 3 boys, her 4-1. I relented. We got the cats. I'm not a fan of the cats. I will say there's no way possible that the cats put a hole in the wall 4 feet up on the wall. I said, okay, how'd they do it? And my youngest said, well, it just lowered his head and rammed straight into the wall. And I tweeted about this. I was like, oh, so it's like Gus Frerotte. For those of you who are old school Washington Redskins fans, it's like when Gus Frerotte rammed his head into the wall to celebrate back in like 1995 or whatever the heck it was. The cat just went totally bonsai and ran straight into the wall. That seems highly unlikely. But that's what they said. I put it up on Twitter. 30,000 of you voted. The comments are very, very funny if you want to be entertained. 85% said they did it. I think you're right, the 85%. I will say 15% of you were still willing to buy in to the idea that maybe the cat did do it and they were 100% innocent. I do respect the fact that they are willing to stand up for each other, indeed, as well. All right. I love all of you. I'll be back on Monday. Have spectacular weekends. We'll see if I'm around potentially to be able to do a live House of the Dragons reaction show. I'll be with you Monday to Thursday for sure next week, and then I got to go on the road again for a little while, and then I'll be back before college football season starts. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I am Clay Travis. This has been OutKick, the show.